The racial tensions that would plague San Quentin State Prison were at an all-time high during the 1970s. One of the many instances of violence was on May 23rd, 1975, when Aryan Brotherhood member Richard Terflinger, sometimes called the brains of the brand, was exercising on the tier when he was approached by inmate Garland Berry, who was also a member of the infamous Black Guerrilla Family, or BGF. Garland Berry would attack Terflinger with a knife, stabbing him multiple times. Terflinger would survive, and interestingly enough, Garland Berry would never be charged with the assault and would actually make parole a short time later.
This is the oath. If I go forward, follow me. If I hesitate, push me. If they kill me, avenge me. If I am a traitor, kill me. That represents a mentality behind bars. It represents, Rita Braver reports, a mentality also loose on the streets.
Members of prison gangs, men so violent that the maximum security unit at San Quentin Prison is divided into sections for different gangs to keep them from attacking each other and from preying on non-members. State and federal officials say that these gangs are a new and terrifying type of organized crime, with chapters in prisons ranging over 20 states, gang leaders inside prisons who control vast networks of crime on the streets.
These prison gangs are both inside and outside, and the organization is, I would say, somewhat like a military organization. The direction may well be coming from inside a prison.
Prison gangs now control so much street crime here in California that the federal government has entered the scene. U.S. attorneys are now prosecuting prison gang leaders under the same racketeering statutes they used to go after the mafia. And like the mafia, prison gangs are organized along ethnic lines, with names like the Black Guerrilla Family, the Aryan Brotherhood, the Mexican Mafia, La Nuestra Familia. Members join in prison and when released go to work in the gang's street operations. Laws allowing visitors and mail make it easy for members in jail to pass orders along to the outside.
We can trace crimes that occur here in Los Angeles that had their origin, their plan, scheme, and design in Marion, Illinois, or Atlanta, or some other state other than California.
Detective Jim Vuchas runs the Los Angeles Police Department's prison gang unit.
Bank robbery, narcotics is a major source of their funding. Burglaries, extortion, prostitution, loan sharking. They won't hesitate to kill. Fear, intimidation, killing, that's their main weapon.
Arthur Beltran used to run street crime for La Nuestra Familia. Because he's a federal witness against his old gang, we're not allowed to show his face on television. He described how the gang recruited street prostitutes.
They would go to the prostitute and they would tell the prostitute, listen, we're going to provide you protection from anyone. If they didn't cooperate then the second step would be to go in there and break their arms or their legs, put them in the hospital. And the final step was they would kill her. They make an example of one and the rest would fold over.
Lawn 20 more in the prisons. The Justice Department has now started a new prison gang task force to monitor the gangs and try to control them.
What we would try to do is to place those gang members in places where we can minimize their recruiting efforts. We would try not to, for example, put all of them in the same prison.
But breaking the gangs is almost impossible. Members take an oath to stay in for life.
An automatic death sentence on any gang member that turns traitor, coward, or deserter.
And money is another lure. Experts say the prison gangs are now about as rich, powerful, and well-organized as the mafia was 30 years ago. Most of the profits from gang crime go back into operations, for legal fees, or to jailed members' families. A few members have made enough money to go from the slums of Los Angeles to the mansions of Beverly Hills. That is the dream for new recruits. But for these young criminals from the ghettos and barrios, just belonging to a crime organization, just appearing strong and mean, may be enough.
Whether it's down the street or in the yard, they've got their shoulders thrown back, their head up, and they're walking tall. They have a lot of pride. There's a lot of machismo to it.
We may control it, say law enforcement officials, but we'll never stop it. Rita Braver, CBS News, San Quentin Prison.
California. They've issued a warrant for the arrest of 25-year-old Andrew Manuel, alias Richard Diaz, for the theft of a house trailer. Police say Manuel and John Collins, the man arrested last week for the murder of the latest co-ed victim, traveled to California in the trailer in June. When we think of prisons, if we bother to think of them at all, that is, there is a tendency to see them as institutions completely divorced from human society, little worlds of their own. But prisons and their inmates are subject to some of the same stresses and strains as the outside world, as Terry Drinkwater reports from San Quentin State Prison in California.
The guards at San Quentin have their own way of describing the mood of the inmates. They call it the climate on the inside. And this summer, the climate is hot. 1 white and 2 black prisoners have been killed. 14 inmates have been stabbed. And even moderate convict leaders concede the situation has sometimes become a race war.
It used to be a certain group against another group, you know, the Nazis against the Muslims. But now it's a black face against a white face, and everyone is a target.
Now, if you're a black man, it don't make any difference what clique you belong to. As long as you're black, you're going to get hit. If you're a white man, it don't make any difference what your age or what clique, you're going to get hit.
Even though San Quentin is a maximum security prison, the inmates are very much influenced by society on the outside and the racial tension that is there. 1/3 of the inmates are black. Many call themselves Panthers or Mau Mau. But white convicts have underground organizations of their own, too. They call themselves Nazis or Ku Klux Klan, and many regard the blacks with open contempt. Listen to the voice of one white convict.
I see a guy with a natural, and he's talking about black is beautiful, and he's sitting there watching TV, and a white woman comes on, and I hear these remarks that he makes about her, you know, what he would like to do with her, you know. And, you know, from the street.
But blacks at San Quentin are angry also. One told us that for every black man who is murdered in the prison, 2 or 3 white convicts will be killed.
And they're going to have to understand that because all of us is dead, you know, if it has to come to that.
Warden, what are the basic reasons for the racial trouble and the killings? What are the fundamental causes of it?
Well, just at this point, we are reflecting more acutely, probably, many of the attitudes and prejudices of people on the street. Only in an institution of this kind, the people that we have contained herein are more likely to act out their prejudices rather than to talk them out. And they're more likely to, instead of saying somebody's a no-goodnik, they're likely to take up a piece of steel and try to do him in. And so we are, in fact, I guess, reflecting the polarization of the races, which appears to me to be taking place on the outside.
There are some other reasons for all the tension at San Quentin. Overcrowding, 2 men living in cells designed originally for just 1. Many were transferred to San Quentin after getting into racial trouble elsewhere. But some accuse the prison guards of stirring up the race trouble, of sneaking in narcotics and weapons.
The police officers that work here bring their prejudice in from the street. The same guy that brings in dope, that will bring in any other thing, was the same guy that will bring in knives and supply it with other side and keep this stuff going.
If you can live together, you live together, but when you got bulls telling you, get this black when it gets down, or another bull telling the blacks, get this white when you get down, you can't stop nothing.
Talking about guards.
I'm talking about guards, yeah, bulls, yeah.
Prison officials point out, though, that most of the weapons confiscated from convicts are crude but effective devices, improvised within the prison. Yet Warden Lewis Nelson is concerned that some guards might be stirring up trouble with thoughtless remarks and racial slurs. He warned them it could boomerang.
I would hope that we don't have anybody on the staff who feel this way, because I pointed out to the third watch, there's this much danger for everybody involved. If this thing blossoms out into a full-blown racial war, if it does, and they're talk that it will. I've got some letters in here that said, you're not going to keep us from it, Warden, no matter how you go. That we're going to get this thing down, we're going to resolve it here. If it comes down to that, remember, you are either black or white, as the case may be. And you may be marked for extinction because this war might of necessity have to be escalated. Now, in my work, I've seen 10 members of the staff lay with their blood flowing out of them. I don't want to see any more. So, as a favor to your wife, you ought to be circumspect enough in your character so you won't be likely to be a target for this sort of uprising should one occur.
In an attempt to ease the racial tension, the warden has met with both black and white prisoners. One of the sessions was bitter. The inmates accusing the warden of depriving them of what used to be routine privileges after the violence had subsided. They felt they were double-crossed. But the warden's prudence seems to have been justified because the incidents continue. Even now, the warden's approach remains moderate. Yet there's no certainty that reason and mediation will work. But the warden feels it has to work.
Well, sooner or later, and hopefully sooner, the inmates will come to the realization that they've got to live together. We have had the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazis and the black militants sitting down together and talking. We have done better than they have in civilization on the outside, I believe. Failing that, we'll have a bloodbath.
The bloodbath, which Warden Nelson fears, is particularly disturbing because of something else he says. He believes his inmates are simply a microcosm of society on the outside. And he feels that what is happening now on the inside of his prison could well point towards even more violence and murder in the streets in the years to come. Terry Drinkwater, CBS News, San Quentin.
What's going on, you guys? Welcome back. Another episode of Greenlit Gang TV. Hope y'all having a blessed day. Really quick, before jumping into the video, if you do like it, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It does go a long way. We are closing in on 25,000 subscribers. That's going to be a huge deal for my channel, and that is because of each and every one of you. So, as you can see today with the intro, we're going to be talking about a guy, a lesser-known figure amongst the Aryan Brotherhood characters, a guy by the name of Richard Terflinger, a.k.a. Bart Simpson, also went by the brains of the brand. Now, not a lot of information on him. I was able to put what I feel like is a pretty good story on this guy together for you guys. And let me know what you think in the comments below of my video. And let me know what you think of Richard Terflinger. Born on February 26, 1947 in Phoenix, Arizona. He would die November 8th, 2020 at the California Healthcare Facility. It's a prison located in Stockton, California. It's obviously people who are terminally ill, a lot older. You know, try to give them a little bit of comfort before they pass away, but they're still 100% behind bars. Known as the brains of the brand for his very, very, just intellect. Interestingly enough, too, I found out he was the right-hand man, or considered the right-hand man, for Robert Blinky Griffin, the very infamous and polarizing leader of the Aryan Brotherhood. These guys did a lot of time together. You can just tell they were locked up around the same time, all the same decades. And Terflinger, like I said, he was viewed as Blinky's go-to guy. Also, played a huge part in the race wars and the racial tension that plagued San Quentin and other prisons in California during the 70s. 77 is kind of the year that they refer to as the race war year in San Quentin. But a lot of those instances were going on before that and after that. Just pieces of those news stories that I put up for you guys to watch and other stories that I watched I didn't even put in the video. This was going on for a long time. And, you go back to the 60s and 70s when these gangs, the BGF and the Aryan Brotherhood, this is how these gangs came about. It was all about racial segregation. It was all about stick with your people to remain safe, and you do what you got to do to survive. And it's just really fascinating to me to watch those old news clips. I'll never get bored of watching it. I know sometimes I get comments that people don't like them, but especially for today's video, it fits. So I want to give a shout out to a page on social media. I've shouted out before. I want to make sure I give credit, though, again today. Prison Chronicles. They actually posted the picture of Richard Terflinger that I saw, and it made me want to investigate further. So I want to make sure I give credit to Prison Chronicles. Go check that page out on any social media platform. Interestingly, on one of the platforms I read in a comment, he was also known as Tricky Ricky due to his slick shenanigans and legal knowledge. And I feel like that goes hand in hand with the term brains of the brand. Makes a lot of sense there. And another shout out to another channel, Convicts and Cops, for the little bit of info I picked up from this. It said the AB and Black Girl Family BGF conflict in the Cali prison system went on for decades. And then it did talk about the attack on Terflinger at the hands of Garland Berry. Now, a little bit of distinction. So on the Convicts and Cops piece about it, it said it happened on May 25th, 1975. In an article that I read, it said that it happened on May 23rd, 1975. That was the only difference I saw. But information was the same. Happened on a tier. Our guy Terflinger is working out. Garland Berry approaches him and brutally attacks him, stabs him in the chest, the arm. And not only does Terflinger survive, but Garland Berry's not even charged, and then he makes parole sometime after that. I just thought that was really, really interesting. This is an article on that particular race war from March of 2023. I'm just going to read from this. It's about filmmakers that went to San Quentin back in 1974. In the winter of 1974, a couple of young filmmakers were allowed into San Quentin, where they interviewed several inmates. Most prominently, Robert Pincushion Smith, but also the cop killers Gregory Powell and Gene Myrick. All three saved from the gas chamber by California's 1972 stay on capital punishment. The young filmmakers were actually filming in San Quentin on the very day, December 19th, when the Mexican mafia hit the Black Guerrilla family in 2 brazen attacks that left 2 dead and 4 severely wounded, and managed to film some of the victims being carried away. Though they may not have known it, the filmmakers even managed to interview an actual member of the BGF. His name? Garland Berry, a known troublemaker housed in the adjustment center. When the filmmakers years later released the San Quentin tapes, they inserted a brief text telling that Berry was later killed in the prison. Garland Berry, I did not know that. Garland Berry was known as Pancho in the BGF, and in May of 75, he was still, or again, in San Quentin's adjustment center. So was Richard Terflinger, a convicted murderer and known member of the Aryan Brotherhood, the arch enemy of Pancho's gang. And then they put a picture up of those guys. That's a really good picture. I'm glad I could show you guys that. And you see Terflinger there in the back right. On May 23rd, 1975, Pancho armed himself with a shank and attacked Terflinger while he was exercising on the tier. Though stabbed in the face and shoulders, Richard Terflinger survived, and Garland Berry was never charged for the assault. Instead, Pancho was paroled. In May, though, 1977, he was sent back to San Quentin on parole violations. 3 days later, Garland Berry was stabbed to death by Barry Mills and one other member of the AB. A very long memory. So I just feel like that's so interesting, man, because everybody knows who Barry Mills is. I've done videos on him. Everybody on YouTube, if you cover this genre, have done videos on Barry Mills. We've all watched the Gangsters America's Most Evil doc. We've all watched everything on Barry Mills, man. At least I have. And I just think that is so crazy that the guy that attacked the Richard Terflinger, who we're talking about today, 2 years later, he's back on a violation, and he doesn't make it 3 full days before Barry Mills kills him. Fearing that the killing of Garland Berry would trigger a full-blown race war, the prison authorities reacted swiftly and locked major parts of San Quentin down. Each time the lockdown was eased, the black and white convicts were at each other's throats. It culminated on July 12th when members of a group called Satan's Few, described as Nazi bikers, mistook a black Muslim for a member of the BGF and killed him. Later that day, a group of well-armed black Muslims ambushed members of the American National Socialists and killed 2 of them. Things were lit back then, to say the least. Now, interestingly enough, he was named in the very infamous RICO case against the Aryan Brotherhood back in 2002, okay? And there he is, right? Richard Lloyd Terflinger, he's listed there. But what I thought was really fascinating is him, along with 2 other guys, actually beat these RICO charges. I did not know that. So Richard Terflinger, Gary Luttrell, and Michael McElhaney, or Heaney, all beat and had their RICO charges dropped. I just thought that was really interesting. And then the last piece of information I got about him before his death was an article of January 30th, 2016, and it talks a little bit about his crime that he went to prison for, so I'm glad I found it. January 30th, 2016, he gets denied parole, probably for the last time. Parole was denied Tuesday for a 68-year-old Corcoran State Prison inmate serving consecutive life terms for killing a fast food employee in Los Angeles in 1967 and stabbing an inmate 3 times in 1981 at California Institution for Men in Chino. Richard Terflinger was denied parole for 5 more years after the Board of Prison Terms found he is, quote, still a threat to the public due to his violent history spanning over 5 decades and his heavy involvement in prison gang politics during his time in custody, said San Bernardino County District Attorney spokesman Christopher Lee. Mr. Terflinger and 2 other men were convicted and sentenced to life for killing a Kentucky Fried Chicken employee in L.A. after they escaped from jail after a conviction on a robbery charge in 1967. In 77 and again in 80, Mr. Terflinger and other high-security inmates tried cutting through jail bars and escape attempts. Wow. His conviction led Mr. Terflinger to the California Institution for Men in Chino, where in 1981 he stabbed an inmate 3 times in the back. He was then convicted to another life term by a San Bernardino County court judge, and he's being held at the Corcoran Prison Substance Abuse Treatment Facility, and he would die at the California Healthcare Facility in Stockton. What a life, man. It's a hell of a life. Born in 47, the most recent thing you saw, he commits a murder in 67, but that was after he'd already escaped. So he's probably getting locked up from his teenage years. And then he never got out after that 67 murder. That's 20 years old when he killed that guy at KFC. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Until next time, peace.